The world is too small, our wisdom too limited, our time here too short. We have to now find a way to triumph together.
We're facing a new moment of darkness and challenge, of anger, division, doubt, and fatigue. Amidst so much of uncertainty, it's easy to despair over what's next. But it takes courage to ask hard questions, and even more, to answer them. And at CGI, we've been answering what's next for the last 20 years.
We have gathered today from all across the world to maximize the opportunities to bring us together.
In 2005, President Bill Clinton transformed philanthropy with the simple but singular idea that hard problems can be solved by committing to act together.
In this community, we all make the choice to show up every single day, to do the work, to make it work, and to be part of what's working.
There's an opportunity to actually make commitments to action, and that became the mantra of CGI.
This whole initiative is in the how business. How are you going to do it so that you maximize the positive impact in other people's lives?
Now, 20 years later, the movement he started has grown into a community more than 10,000 leaders strong, with a proven track record of success, delivering real solutions to millions around the world.
And we are joined by so many people making remarkable commitments
to recruit, train, and support 20,000 new STEM teachers
To rapidly respond to the evolving Ebola crisis.
To bring hope to the people in Haiti.
To create good jobs for American workers.
To fully leverage the power of AI to predict promising treatments.
For girls to speak up loudly with our voices.
Today, we know the CGI community is who can chart what's next.
Participants in CGI don't accept poverty and other plagues as inevitable. We look for ways to achieve what others say can't be done.
We've made new partnerships that lead to real impact.
And let me remind you that one book, one pen, and one teacher can change the world.
We've tackled urgent problems with real solutions.
Big problems have very simple solutions. Start cooking and start reaching the people.
Together, we've been fueling a better future. Each meal served, each well built, each vaccine delivered has proven CGI is built for this moment.
We need everybody in this fight.
Be persistent and never, ever give up.
Every day is the choice. Look at all the good that's been done because you made a decision about what to do with your mind and your heart. No one can ever take that away.
So when we hear a chorus of doubters asking, what's next? We have the answer. She's what's next. He's what's next. I'm what's next. We are what's next. At CGI, be what's next.
Please welcome to the stage, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and welcome to CGI. We've got a busy 2 days ahead of us, but before we begin, I think it would be irresponsible, almost jarring, for us to take off and not acknowledge the traumatic rise in political violence that we have seen in our country in recent months. So I'm worried about it, and I want to say just a few words about it and how it affects what we're doing here. I'm worried because we're pulling further and further away from one another. You hear people very disturbed about what happened to Mr. Kirk and his family. I am too. Then, not long before that, we lost a former Speaker of the House in Minnesota and her husband and one of her colleagues. What I can't get over is if you go back through, all the way back to, let's say, Charleston, the Mother Emanuel Church, there seems to be too much difference in the people who are grieving. I think this is the product of our disagreements in America becoming so deep that people are desperate not only to win elections and against those they disagree with, but to actually dominate them at any cost. And in a democratic republic, that poisons politics and puts the entire experiment that we've been working on for 250 years at risk. I'm worried about America dismantling so suddenly and without advanced planning domestic and foreign assistance programs. I'm worried about the war on science and public health, the assaults on higher education, the banning of books in the military academies, the proliferation of costly trade wars, the fracturing of alliances and international institutions that have served the world for decades, the elimination of asylum and resettlement programs, the trampling of due process. I'm worried about all these things. And I'm worried about the idea that public service is in danger of becoming a new profit center. I'm worried that we're at risk of losing our freedom of speech, and that the weight of the government is being used to restrict expression from journalism to comedy. Look, no politician likes the press on bad days. Thomas Jefferson once said that if he had to choose between a government and a free press, he would without hesitation choose to keep the free press and lose the government. Every time somebody tells me that story, I remind them that he said that before he became president. But the press is supposed to be tough on us, facing hard questions and being forced to think them through and answer them makes our ideas stronger and our politics better. And if the coverage is unfair and inaccurate, we can stand up and do that and point it out and express our disagreements without trying to put people who are doing their jobs under the Constitution out of business. That's wrong. So, and you don't build strong societies by doing this. It's an illusion. It causes societies to fail when their institutions are all discredited. So I think we all have to acknowledge that vigorous debate and disagreements and dissent are necessary, healthy in a functioning democracy. but violence, intimidation, and repression are not. We got to be clearly all on the same side for the first and against the latter. And we start by practicing seeing each other as people again, both in person and online. You know, once you start dehumanizing people, once we take three-dimensional people and turn them into two-dimensional cartoons, it's hard to come back from that. It's easy to tear somebody down and hard to go build them back up. And it's bad for all of us. So of all the outcomes that emerge from this meeting, I hope above all else, we will model a better way forward. We will prove that we're open to different viewpoints, that we respect our differences, and that we're working together for better tomorrows. I know our work this year won't be easy. I know there's been so many controversies that have divided America so much, and also other parts of the world. I'm aware that many of you here and the organizations you represent are contending with tough times and conflicting pressures. And so more than anything else right now, I just want to thank you for facing the obstacles and making the brave decision not to give in to fear, to come here and do something about it. We started CGI 20 years ago because all the evidence I had seen across a lifetime, both in public office and as a private citizen working with the foundation, proved to me beyond any question that cooperation works better than conflict, that diverse groups actually, time and again, have been proved to make better decisions than homogeneous groups or lone geniuses, that positive sum systems where everybody has a chance to win beat zero-sum competition in terms of building strong countries, strong communities, strong societies. Thanks to you and all your predecessors, the last 20 years have worked out better than I ever dreamed. Over the last 20 years, more than 500 million people in more than 190 countries have been positively affected by people keeping their CGI commitments. And so we're here to keep moving forward and to keep looking forward. Don't forget, next year, if you're an American, is our nation's 250th birthday. And our long journey toward a more perfect union, everybody knows we've been far from perfect. And I, for one, do not believe we need to rewrite the history of the country to remove our imperfections. It makes recognizing what you've done wrong or how you've grown out of an old habit is a strengthening, invigorating experience. Pretending that you were always perfect is deadening, and it's exhausting. Remember the great insect biologist E.O. Wilson, who died in his early 90s a couple of years ago, said that our species on Earth has survived because, along with ants, termites, and bees, we're the best cooperators. And unlike them, we have both a conscience and a consciousness. And it is our conscience that every time we move to the breaking point of a society, every time we come to a brink and almost fall off the deep end, our conscience has kicked in and has made us the longest lasting, continuous democracy in human history. Not because we were perfect, but because we weren't. But the alarm went off and got us back in line. And the alarm reminds us that as mad as we get at one another, what we have in common is more important than what divides us. That there is no challenge that we can't overcome if we work together, and that every single one of us has a role to play. For 20 years here at CGI, a big part of that role has been to fill the gap between what the public sector can provide and what the private sector can produce. We've done that by creating networks of cooperation, where different individuals and organizations bring their distinct perspectives and expertise and come up with new ideas or better on-the-ground implementation of those ideas or interesting ways to generate funding to make them reality. CGI is basically a big, often incredible network of cooperation. And by being here, you're showing up for one another and for countless millions of people outside this room. Look, I'm not naive about the scope of the challenges we face. But we have to decide every single day whether we're just going to scream into the wind or scream behind closed doors or roll up our sleeves and get to work doing what we can. You're living proof that the latter choice is far better if you want to make a real difference in your own life and the lives of your fellow humans. We're trying to do everything we can to provide a counterweight to a lot of the negative things that have taken place in the last several months. And this year's meeting, as a lot of you have already found out by the morning sessions, will look and feel different than the ones we've held before, because the whole thing is organized around our working group model to provide more room for honest, real, person-to-person conversations around all these big challenges, and to give every one of you the opportunity to come together to embrace solutions, forge coalitions, and make plans to fill the new gaps created over the last few months, as well as the gaps that were there before. The theme of the meeting is what's next. The truth is, Hillary, Chelsea, and I don't know, and neither do you. And we should be grateful for that. We shouldn't be ashamed to say, we don't know where all this is going to play out, but we know what side we're on. We know what we're going to try to do to make the most of every day. And we know that the CGI community is particularly well suited to step up to meet the pressing needs that are already manifest here and around the world. I have lived long enough to know that disillusionment is a decision in advance to be disappointed. And that is a mistake. And so here's what I think. If we hold our heads high, keep our eyes and ears open, and deal with others with an outstretched hand and not a clenched fist, we got a chance to keep hope alive. We have a chance to make a meaningful difference in many people's lives, here and around the world. So I urge you to keep that in mind. If you do, there's a good chance this could be our best CGI meeting yet, and our future depends on it. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hi, I'm Athena Jones, special correspondent for CGI TV. We're here in New York where the 20th Clinton Global Initiative annual meeting is kicking off. This annual meeting transformed philanthropy. Now in 2025, the global development community stands at an unprecedented crossroads, facing growing humanitarian needs with fewer resources. In this constantly changing landscape, CGI has never been more important. This year, CGI introduces new working groups where leaders across sectors collaborate to solve problems in real time. The goal, to make progress on these solutions over the next 1 to 3 years. Action over talk, outcomes over ideology. This is CGI.
Please welcome to the stage Governor Gavin Newsom and President Bill Clinton.
All right. 20 years. I saw that video. I was here, I think, for 19 of, I've got more Clintonisms. I'm going to enjoy this. This is going to be some fun. The how business. I like that.
I met Gavin Newsom when he was mayor of San Francisco. And he looked like he was 12 years old. And I said, God, I hate this guy. He's so tall, and he's taller than I am, younger than I am, better looking than I am.
There we go.
But what really matters is he's a really good person and an extraordinarily gifted public service.
Thanks.
And he represents, along with his family, Jennifer, where are you? Stand up.
There, man. The better half. My wife.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with something that is easy, but I think it's important because it's amazing that a lot of people don't know anything about California. Except a lot of the stuff that's said.
Yeah.
And I love it. I went to California, had more problems than you can imagine when I was elected president. I went there 29 times in my first term.
Yeah.
But they were good to me. And what I found was it was hundreds and hundreds of small towns in the cities and certainly beyond. I've been to the town in America that has the largest percentage of Japanese Americans. I went to a town campaigning for Hillary where the mayor, this little town in Northern California, the mayor was the son of the local judge in Fayetteville, Arkansas, when Hillary and I got married and went there to teach in the law school. And the local judge was a crusty old guy who let Hillary bring students into the legal aid program for the first time. And I'm standing in Northern California with the mayor. There's somebody there from everywhere. It's a fascinating place. So tell us, and I think it's now the 4th biggest economy in the world.
That's right. Eat your heart out. UK, Germany. That's it.
So tell us what you think we should know about what's going right in California.
Well, I appreciate the context. Look, you know, California is America, but only more so. We're the most, in the spirit of your introductory remarks, and just to set the scene, it's the size of 21 state populations combined. It's the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. 27% of my state is foreign-born. We practice pluralism. It's a point of pride. I say that because it needs to be said, and you reinforce it here today. It's in that diversity that we have achieved so much strength. We dominate in every critical industry. Yes, we're the fourth largest economy in the world, $4.1 trillion a year, but we dominate with more engineers, more scientists, more Nobel laureates, more venture capital, the finest system of higher education, public higher education in the world, in business startups, #1 in two-way trade, #1 in direct foreign investment in every category. The dominant manufacturing state, the dominant farming state, the dominant state as it relates to hunting jobs. You didn't know that. Jobs related, in every category, we have no peers. We talk about the future, you're talking about what's next. California's in the future business. But we're also in the spirit of the video, in the how business. And so it's not about what and why. And this notion of the future is what animates California. And the future, as you said, final words you said, the word manifest. Future is not something to experience, it's something to manifest. It's decisions, not conditions, that determine our fate and future. And I think that mindset is the thing that defines the game played in California versus the game played in many other parts of the country.
How have you used that to deal with the fires and the aftermath of it?
It depends which fire you're referring to. You know, I was
the physical
if you
one.
come in 29 times, I'm just glad Trump is only come one time, and it's a hell of a time for us. Look, as it relates to fires, you know, we talk about the future happens in California first, where America's coming attraction. Well, that definitely relates to what's going on around us as it relates to the hot's getting hotter, the dry's getting drier, the wet's getting wetter. This notion that, you know, we're dealing with extreme heat, extreme weather, and as a consequence, the challenges that we're presented as it relates to large-scale wildfires. And California had one of its most devastating wildfires earlier this year in the middle of winter. And I just want to remind people, in the middle of winter in Los Angeles, in the most resourced region in the United States of America, more firefighters per capita in LA County than any other part of the globe, in a state that has the largest civilian fleet of aircraft for fire suppression anywhere in the world, in a state where I've doubled the budget in terms of the state fire investments, and 10x the investments in forest management and vegetation management, and yet still we lost 16,000 structures, homes and buildings, because we had a fire that was attached to 100-mile-an-hour winds in the middle of winter in Southern California. And so I take that issue very seriously. Places, lifestyles, traditions being wiped off the map. If you don't believe in science, you got to believe your own eyes. And this notion, you talk about small towns in California, Grizzly Flats, Greenville, Paradise, California. Been around 150 years, disappearing. And so I'm here with you, I'm also here at the UN, Climate Week, reasserting California's leadership in this space. In the absence of national leadership, California once again is reasserting itself on low carbon green growth, reasserting itself in the work we're doing to address the challenges of climate change. And fire is a huge part of it. And if I may just extend, forgive the extended point, we also dominate in innovation in this space. And it didn't feel that way in the aftermath of those fires. You're like, what the hell, how did you not prevent these? We had 104 engines that we had pre-positioned down there from the state 2 days in advance. I told you about the resources, next level. Well, the world, literally, we have people from around the globe that come to California to learn about the latest technology, the latest innovation. 1,200 AI cameras. We were the first to demonstrate the benefits of those, a fire system, partnerships with Lockheed, the Pentagon, next level weather strategies and fusion centers and technology that we've integrated. All of those things, drone technology, all of that. And yet still we face the realities of these wildfires. And it's not just in California, it's all over the Western United States, for that matter, across the globe. And I think the issue that is so under-resourced in terms of mind share is the insurance issue. And I think this issue, I really believe this, from a global perspective, may be one of the most pressing global issues as it relates to the issues of climate change. The inability to purchase a home, let alone to get a mortgage on a home, to develop a home with an insurance market that simply is no longer viable because people are unwilling to take the risk and make the kind of capital outlays and investments to address that issue. I think this issue requires leadership at the national level. It is under-resourced, under-focused. It's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for Ron DeSantis in Florida, for governors in most states. But it's not, I think, top of mind, and we need to be more focused on it.
Well, what do you think should be done about it? I mean, I'm not trying to get you into a different job right now, but
I don't want, people didn't come here to talk about insurance, but we just put out our sustainable insurance strategy. We just had 4 of our admitted market come back in the last, in fact, 2 days ago, we had our 4th come back in. We had a lot of folks who were leaving the market. Simply said, we can't insure folks here. It's too expensive, and the losses are too significant. We had to address the reinsurance market. We had to address the capital needs of these companies. And we also had to address the fact that California, and you wouldn't know this, is among the most affordable insurance markets in the country because the voters initiated a framework on regulation that denied significant rate increases. As a consequence of that, people started exiting the market. And the reforms we've just put into place allow for more rapid rate increases. And that's the pressure point now as we move from about average to below average in our rates. We're now starting to see those tick up, but the benefit of that now, part of the strategy, is a requirement to come into California market and also to ensure in what we refer to as the WUI, which is the wildland urban interface, and to cover 85% of the WUI in return for those rate increases. That is not something that on the macro is the solution from the US prism or the global perspective, but at the state level is advancing our reforms.
But this insurance issue is facing every state in one form or another.
Yeah, the globe. I mean, it's not sustainable. And again, it should unite everybody. I mean, there's no Republican, no Democratic thermometer. I heard, and forgive me, I didn't come up here to take cheap shots, but it's pretty remarkable what was said by the current president yesterday at the UN about climate. What the hell is that? Seriously. It can't be normalized. It can't be normalized. This notion that it's a hoax. I mean, what this guy has done, look, I live in a state, and Mr. President, you'll appreciate this, former presidents, you know well. For me, one of them was a governor. Ronald Reagan established the modern environmental movement in 1967. Year of my birth with the California Air Resources Board. And he did so because of the smog in Los Angeles. It was a business-driven decision. The business community said, we simply can't do business in LA, Mr. Governor. And he established the Air Resources Board. 3 years later was Richard Nixon that codified that under the Clean Air Act and gave California a waiver that allowed us to pursue aggressive environmental policy. And that's why California has dominated the national debate in this space. What this president has done in 8 months is jaw-dropping. What he has done to the EPA, what he's done to California's leadership, he's neutralized, he's eliminated under that Clean Air Act our authority to regulate tailpipe emissions. what he continues to do in terms of trying to stop California's global leadership as it relates to our partnerships around not only the country at a subnational level, but around the globe in relationship to our cap and trade program, in relationship to our other partnerships that we've established as it relates to carbon capture and direct air capture and the technology in the space, cannot be understated. And so we are, we're the only game in town right now as it relates to large-scale environmental leadership. And I'll just close on this. We have 6 times more green-collar jobs, green tech jobs, than we do fossil fuel jobs. We're on the other side of the debate. And I think this is a point that should be emphasized. You talk about California, more than I emphasize it. 67% of our electricity grid is completely green and clean. And we have run, which is not bad, but get this, 9 out of 10 days in 2025, we've run the 4th largest economy in the world at 100% clean green energy. 100%. As of last Friday, 217 out of 243 days, 100% clean energy. We're proving the paradigm, the genius of and versus the tyranny of or. And I think, there's power in emulation. Success does leave clues. And I think California's been an interesting and a successful model in this space. And we're just trying to navigate this new space as it relates to the macro headwinds coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
To tell our audience here a little more about what the components of your clean energy are.
Well, I think the thing that we've dominated in is the electricity architecture, and we've dominated in clean cars. I signed the first executive order in the United States to require alternative fuel vehicles by 2035. That was just taken away by Congress, the supine Congress and the president. But we created the market. There is no Elon Musk, there's no Tesla without California's regulatory framework, period, full stop. It wouldn't exist. It was because of the regulations, because of those signals and the subsidies, over $3.2 billion direct subsidies that Tesla received just in my state alone, that built this market. Over a quarter of all new car purchases in California are alternative fuel vehicles. What Trump has just done, and with respect, some of the automobile manufacturers, is they've ceded this to China. They've ceded our competitiveness to China. And it's not just the electric vehicles, it's the tech stack that's part of these electric vehicles. It's the mobility space more broadly defined. It is an act of vandalism on an economic basis, not just an environmental basis, that is deeply alarming. And I hope people wake up to how China is just flooding the zone globally in this space. And we have doubled down on stupid. We're trying to recreate the 19th century. We really have. You talk about what's next. It's not going to be American automobile manufacturers. Bill Ford may run contra to that. He seems to get it deeply. I give him tremendous credit. Remarkable, iconic brand. But I cannot impress upon you more how proud I am. 60 headquartered manufacturer EV companies in the state of California. Supply chain was one of our biggest exports 5 years ago. And it's all about innovation. It's all about that entrepreneurial spirit. And you see, if any of you have been to San Francisco, half the damn cars are driving themselves. It's here. It's happening. All the bi-directional opportunities, the two-way charging, the fact that these cars are little power plants on wheels, all this extraordinary opportunity, and it's slipping away because of bad policy making and short-termism. So we're going to continue to push back against that, but I think from a tech and innovation stack, that's our biggest area of focus.
To say a little bit about, as a practical matter, where you are right now with AI, and has there been any obvious downside, and if so, what is it and how should we manage it?
Well, And I sound like I'm bloviating and I can get into all the real problems in my state, affordability being number 1, 2, 3. But we dominate in artificial intelligence. We have no peers. 32 of the top 50 market cap companies in the globe, are in California. And for obvious reasons. Back to this conveyor belt for talent, the UCs and the CSUs and Caltech and Stanford University, research and development, the Lawrence Livermore Labs and Sandia Labs, and all the investments we're making in science. And so it's happening there because the human capital's there. That's why, Elon talks a big game about Texas, but all of his folks are in the Bay Area. They're all in California. All those AI folks are there. His global headquarters for R&D is in California, which, by the way, is 18% of the globe's R&D. China, Germany, and California. 18% of the global R&D in the state of California. So it's unsurprising we're driving that innovation. But it's all about truth. It's all about trust, promise, peril. And as a consequence of having so much leadership residing in such a concentrated place, California, we have a sense of responsibility and accountability to lead, so we support risk-taking, but not recklessness. From a regulatory frame, we're pretty much the only game in town as well. You're seeing what they're trying to do federally to preempt states from regulating. Ted Cruz, a few days ago, doubling down on that California needs to be neutered, he says, in this space, even though we're dominating in this space. And so we have worked with Fei-Fei Li, the godmother of AI. We're working with Stanford, MIT. We've worked with Berkeley. And we put out a comprehensive white paper that really analyzed where we were from a regulatory frame. I've signed dozens of bills in this space, did the first executive order in the country in this space. But in relationship to the unwinding of President Biden's leadership in this space and the new focus on just let it rip coming out of the White House that David Sachs and others are promoting. And we have a bill, forgive me, that's on my desk that we think strikes the right balance. And we worked with industry, but we didn't submit to industry. We're not doing things to them, but we're not doing things necessarily for them. And we're trying to answer that question from a policy perspective and find that right balance where we can continue to dominate in this space, continue to support the ecosystem, at the same time address that peril and the concerns that legitimate people have.
I want to change the subject a minute.
Back to insurance, yes.
No, everywhere in the country, we read that men are alienated, that they're not going to college as much as they did. They are not necessarily prepared for other jobs they can have. And you actually tried to address this in a fairly comprehensive way. And I'd be surprised if almost anybody in the audience who's not from California knows anything about it. So tell us a little about what you've tried to do to help young men.
Well, I'm going back to your opening remarks. Look, I was here 20 years ago because you tapped me on the shoulder, part of America's promise. You tapped me on the shoulder in a bipartisan way with General Powell. And I'll never forget General Powell coming here and said, no one stands taller than when he or she bends down on one knee to lift someone else up. I love that. I wrote that down, and I repeat it all the time. California now has a service corps that's larger than the Peace Corps. It's the largest service corps in America. College Corps, Climate Corps, in every category, building on your work, building on AmeriCorps. So we just announced, to your question, in order to address the crisis of men and boys, the crisis of men and boys. And I say that because it's hard for members of my own party to say that, because some feel it's a zero-sum game, that we have to address the issues of women and girls and solve for them before we can get to the crisis of men and boys. And when I say crisis, look at the suicide rates, look at the dropout rates, look at the deaths of despair, look at the issues around loneliness, look at every critical category. It's just blinking red lights for young men. And in order to address this, we've been working with Richard Reeves, we've been working at Institute of Boys and Men, we've been working with a lot of other folks to develop a framework, a plan to implement that builds on the constructs that you have framed around service, around mentorship, around tutoring, the work my wife has done, who's done a number of documentaries in this space, including one called Masculivin, about the crisis of masculinity, and begin to substantively address these underlying issues and target interventions. Service is at the core, but it's a component part of a larger strategy that we've just advanced at scale in California. And I'll just end on this, I know our time's up. Just as an example, one of the areas that I never fully appreciated was the lack of men educating our kids. I didn't fully appreciate how few men are in those kindergarten classes, in those second, third grade classes, in middle schools. And so it begins with just simple interventions, but we also have to acknowledge it. Final word. I love the open hand, not a closed fist. You know, I got a lot of closed fists when I did a podcast I started a few months ago. And my first guest was Charlie Kirk, who flew out and visited with me. And second was Steve Bannon. And the reason I had them on was this issue, because they have weaponized this grievance. And electorally, they achieved remarkable results. Charlie Kirk's ability, what he was able to achieve in terms of organizing the campuses, engaging these young men, addressing their grievances, giving them some sense of hope, that someone cared, that they mattered, that they were seen. He was able to produce and organize around that in a deeply meaningful way. And the Democratic Party was nowhere to be found on the issue. And Bannon as well. And so I say that to say this: we need to address the issue because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do.
We have to wrap up, but if you were to say to this crowd, you have lots of concerns, you know a lot about everything, which is why I like talking to you. But a group like this, if we could emphasize one thing that we could do in America in the midst of all this political BS that we're dealing with every day, what would you ask us to do? What do you think the most important thing in terms of citizen action is that we could be doing?
I remember Justice Brandeis had a wonderful quote. He wrote a lot about citizenship. Said, in a democracy, the most important office, Brandeis said, is not the office of presidency, with respect, certainly not governor or mayor, but it's the office of citizen. This notion of active, not inert citizenship. And I think at the core of that is this idea that we have agency, that we can shape the future, that we're not bystanders in the world. And I think back to the spirit of your opening remarks, is this notion that we have the capacity to shape our future, and we also have to recognize that we have to reconcile each other's futures in relationship. And forgive me, I'm closing with my deep CGI, absorbing what you've been about for all these years. This idea that divorce is not an option, as you say all the time. We have to define the terms of our future. And I think that spirit of grace and humility is also part of that as well. And so I thank you, in final words, 2 decades of preaching this gospel, but also practicing it. And I just think at this precious moment in our life, we need to be reminded that we all want to be loved. We all need to be loved. We all share, as you said, this same short moment in life. We all want to be protected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be connected to something larger than ourselves. And I think in that space, we find the answer to your question.
A long time ago, when I met the mayor of San Francisco, I came home and told Hillary, I said, you know, I wanted to dislike this guy. I mean, he's good looking and he's tall and he's younger than I am, but there's something special about him. I still believe that. And I thank you for your service, and I thank you for being here. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you.
Angelo Salgado, Senior Director of Operations, been here since 2016. The terminal's gone through a complete transformation from fresh new architectural design and high ceilings, natural light, curated artwork, really delivering a true New York sense of place.
As anyone might tell you, New York LaGuardia Airport's Terminal B was one of the more challenging travel experiences. But today, it's a modern world-class facility, a gateway to one of the most important cities in the world.
We have 11 out of 17 that are open at the moment, and it looks like we're operating quite efficiently. My main focus here at Terminal B is to ensure that the operation delivers every day a safe, seamless, and exceptional experience for all our guests, but also for the thousands of employees that are working here every day.
Lane 6, join lane 1 for gate 12.
This is a huge deal. This system will work.
In 2011, the AFL-CIO joined a coalition of New York State pension funds in making a CGI commitment to action to invest in the future. Specifically, critical infrastructure projects that could spur the economy and create jobs amid a lagging recovery of the U.S. financial crisis.
Pension fund managers will invest money to improve infrastructure and increase energy efficiency. They are financing energy-saving building retrofits and clean energy projects to create good jobs for American workers.
That commitment unlocks billions of dollars in new projects, like the landmark redevelopment of LaGuardia's Terminal B, a public-private partnership with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, converting this more than 80-year-old hub into a new model of energy efficiency, beauty, and function.
Being recognized as one of the best airports in the world truly is a testament of all the hard work done collectively as a community here at LaGuardia Airport. Especially being a born and raised New Yorker, we're truly proud of what we've been able to accomplish here, and we continue to deliver on that every day.
Action over talk, outcomes over ideology. This is CGI.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Well, thank you for that warm and unnecessarily generous welcome. It's really just such a joy to be together here on our 20th anniversary. It's hard for me to believe that it was 20 years ago when my father convened the first CGI and asked us to do something that really had never been framed in the way that he so uniquely is able to do so, asking us what we would do to make a difference, a tangible, measurable difference in the areas and arenas that we feel most passionate about. What we do to take action and what would we do to make a commitment. Now, 2 decades later, arguably, our problems feel more immense, more intractable, and the forces of darkness against progress feel all the more emboldened. But I certainly am not deterred by this moment, partly because, thankfully, I inherited indefatigable optimism from my parents, and also in large part because of this extraordinary community and how you continue to put optimism and possibility into action. When hurricanes and earthquakes devastated Haiti, we came together and are still together, committing to rebuild schools, vital architecture, vital infrastructure, restore farmlands, and importantly to me, strengthen, and defend health systems. When the financial crisis hit here at home, we helped spark numerous investments that created jobs, protected jobs, and rebuilt our infrastructure right here in New York City, including the $10 billion initiative that you just saw in the video that helped transform LaGuardia, as I'm sure many of you who traveled to be with us personally experienced. When Ebola threatened the world, we didn't wait to be told what to do. We sprung into action and coordinated the single largest ever emergency airlift from the United States, bringing tens of thousands of pounds of medical supplies to West Africa. When Puerto Rico and the Caribbean largely were battered by storms, we stood side by side with leaders from the public and not-for-profit sectors in those areas, delivering what they asked us to bring, in total more than $400 million worth of assistance for recovery and resilience. And when COVID-19 hit, we mobilized right here in the United States to help ensure that families were fed, that babies could have clean diapers, that small businesses could stay alive, and that we could protect communities wherever possible. And finally, when Ukraine was invaded, we joined with President Zelensky and First Lady Zelenska and partners across the globe to launch the Ukraine Action Network that also still continues to stand side by side with the Ukrainian government and NGOs working in Ukraine. So as hopefully you already know and now know a little bit more from just the very few examples I cited, we are incredibly proud that in the hardest moments, in the most urgent moments, the CGI community continues to show up, to commit, and to prove what is possible. And I know, because of the people I'm about to welcome onto the stage, that this ethos, this ethic, only continues with enormous power of possibility and impact in the world today. So I really now want to welcome our slate of commitment makers to the stage, and am incredibly honored to share even just a little bit about their work. Yes, please give them a round of applause. As more people tell us that they feel more economically insecure than ever before, the Everest Group is making progress on its commitment to match historically marginalized individuals to jobs that they want to have, jobs that are well-paying, jobs that bring dignity to their lives and to their families, to fundamentally break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. They matched more than 20,000 people to good jobs in 2024 alone. Please give them a round of applause. As temperatures continue to rise around the world to increasingly concerning, even deadly levels, WEO is leveraging cutting-edge technology in urban African communities that are on the front line of the climate crisis. Using AI that analyzes satellite data and tracks climate trends, this commitment to action will enable those same municipalities to respond in close to real time to climate events and to make strategic investments to help ensure that their communities are more resilient to future climate events and able to mitigate them more quickly. Please give them a round of applause. And a commitment that is very close to my heart and to my work at a time when there are active, malevolent agents of misinformation working to destroy trust in science and medicine, including in one of the greatest achievements in all of human history, vaccines and vaccinations. The Unity Consortium is committing to combat vaccine misinformation truly on the ground by training 10,000 young people to be effective peer-to-peer educators so that they're able to have conversations with their friends and their classmates about what the science actually says about vaccines and helping to equip them with the abilities to recognize mis and disinformation whenever they may come across it, online and off. Please give Unity a round of applause. And of course, there are so many people in this room, kind of so many people beyond this room in the organizations that you all represent that are grappling with the devastation wreaked upon development assistance by choices that this administration has made in the last close to 9 months. One group that is responding to this is the Human Rights Funders Network that will launch and scale a coordinated playbook to help catalyze philanthropic funding and ensure that it is coordinated among different funders, hopefully enabling true, dare we say, efficiency. Its Better Preparedness initiative is currently being used to mobilize funding for projects in Afghanistan, in Georgia, in the United States, and across the world. Please join me in recognizing all of these extraordinary leaders that I am so proud to stand here on the stage with, and I hope that they will forgive me because I got quite emotional talking about each of them, that I didn't really read the teleprompter. So if I forgot vital pieces of your work, I hope that you'll blame only me and not the extraordinary CGI staff. And while I ask each of them to join me in front of the podium for a photo, I hope that I can ask all of you actually to maybe rise up once again and give a rousing applause for our extraordinary CGI team who has made all of this possible today. Thank you all so much. We are incredibly proud to stand with these commitment makers, and as ever, I hope if you are compelled by the brief bit that I shared on each of them, I hope that you will find them in the hallways afterward and figure out how you can work together or support their work so that they're able to even more kind of efficiently and effectuate their missions in the world. I have met many extraordinary people through the CGI community over the last 2 decades. Many of whom are in this room, many of whom have become lifelong friends, many of whom inspire me kind of with their work and with the ways in which they lead their lives kind of through their work and beyond. One person in particular has left an indelible impression on me. He is someone that I am proud to call a friend, someone I am honored to learn with and learn from. The first person who had emailed me when I woke up this morning, really just, I could not imagine kind of my life or my work without the singularly extraordinary Sixto Cancel. Please welcome him to the stage as he shares a little bit more about his story and a little bit more about the organization that he founded that we are so grateful is in the world. Think of us. Thank you all very much.
I met my brother for the first time when I was 14. Hoping for a better life, he left the projects where he grew up. He learned I entered foster care at 11 months and adopted at 8, 9. He hated that my adopted mother was abusive. I taped the recorder to my chest, proved it, and was back in foster care. Being a foster kid taught me family was for other people. I learned to carry my life in a trash bag and move when told. I learned the choreography of not belonging, the spare bed, the new house rules, the smile you practice so you don't look ungrateful. Tyson wanted me out of foster care. The state's answer, become licensed. He needed an apartment that met state requirements, training, and more. Without it, there was no legal custody or financial help. His part-time job while in high school wasn't enough. He went back to the projects, the dangerous projects, to save money. His worst fear became our reality. He was killed. Financial support, simpler forms, and one new rule, and my brother could have lived to build us a home. Hope without resources is cruel. When I met Chelsea Clinton years later, I shared recommendations for CGI to fix foster care. She listened and then asked me, how can you take action? That challenge reframed everything. My commitment to action evolved from an app into a virtual service, responding to 10,000 requests from youth and relatives for housing, food, and more, impacting over 23,000 people, the very help my brother needed. We advanced federal policy for a government kinship care model, finding relatives and placing children with them from day one with real financial help. That reform unlocked $3 billion, and 18 states have begun the shift in less than 18 months. Beyond kinship, we've built the largest database of 51,000 youth experiences, voices that unlocked $400 million during the pandemic, sparked a Senate investigation into abuse, and helped pass 3 laws, all in partnership. So what's next? We'll use AI to scale our service and partner with states to shift to kinship care. But kinship is not just an American solution. It can move children out of the orphanages in India, Haiti, and Nigeria. Extended relatives as caregivers in war zones like Ukraine, South Sudan, and Venezuela. Kin is expanding as a solution, resource to care for aging relatives, homeless relatives, and veterans and their families. It is a simple idea. Support family to support family. Chelsea didn't just listen to my idea. She pushed me to act. Today, I return to CGI not just as a product of foster care, but as a product of this community, a community of doers who believe bold ideas deserve to be built and then build. We've shown that when we listen to people and center lived experience, we don't just reimagine systems, we transform them. I'll end with this. Never doubt if we can find family to act. At 27, I found out my father's family was having a reunion. They didn't know I existed. While there, I discovered I had aunts who fostered and adopted longer than I had been alive. All I can do was pull out my phone, GPS to my last foster home, 58 miles away. Kinship was always the solution. Let's ensure all children growing up in families where they can heal, develop, and thrive no matter their start. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Tom Golisano, Dr. Chelsea Clinton, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, and President Bill Clinton.
Thank you. It's my great honor today to welcome back an extraordinary entrepreneur, philanthropist, and civic leader, without whom we might not be here today. He is responsible as anyone, for CGI's success over the last 20 years. When we held our first meeting back in 2005, I had no idea who would show up. I mean, think about it. You take this for granted today. It was a preposterous suggestion that people should actually pay a membership fee to come to a meeting in which, in order to come back, they'd have to commit to do something for somebody else. Nobody had ever done it before. And I didn't have any idea if it would work. The man standing right here next to Hillary and Chelsea and me gave us a big boost because he was an immensely successful business person who thought it wasn't a bad idea. And for several years, he gave us what was then and is now an enormous amount of money to cover the cost of the meetings. He saw the vision, he believed in it, he helped us to execute it. And he stayed with us for many years, helping CGI to grow and our community to develop in the United States and all over the world. Since then, he's gone on to fund important work across upstate New York and elsewhere, including in his hometown of Rochester, in the areas of intellectual and developmental disabilities, health education, animal welfare, and more. Today, the CGI community has made more than 4,200 commitments that have made a positive difference in more than 500 million lives. That would not have been possible if it hadn't been for the money Tom Golisano gave us to get started and keep going in those early years. So on behalf of all the people whose lives have been positively impacted, as well as Hillary, Chelsea, and the entire CGI community here today, I'm very honored to present my friend Tom Golisano with the 2025 Global Citizenship Award for CGI. You exactly.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One day I get a call from a political operative from upstate New York, and he says, Mr. Clinton would like to meet you. President Clinton would like to meet you and talk to you. I said, I don't know why. Yeah, okay. Where are we going? I said, some office in New York City or Washington. No, we're going to his house. And I said, his house? Boy, this is interesting. Got to his house. I walked in the front door. First thing I saw was a pillow on the couch that said, be the kind of person your dog thinks you are. I was so amused by that pillow, I came back to Rochester and had one made, and it's still on my couch in my house. But then we got down to serious discussion, and I listened to his ideas, and they made sense to me, although this thought of doing this type of thing at my age and my time was sort of remote, but I listened to it and I took it all in. And I went home and I decided I would make a decision. The opportunity to help hundreds of millions of people around the world was very, very appealing to me, and of course to the Clinton family. We did it. We had a lot of fun the first few years. We had to work out the menus and all that type of thing, but we did it, and it came out very well. I have a lot of pride in the fact that I was part of this organization that serves so many people in our world. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud I've met the Clinton family, and I'm grateful for this award that they're giving me today. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage representatives from Unitaid, CHAI, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, foreign and health ministers from Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia.
For the last 25 years, and quite a few when I was in the White House, I spent a lot of time working with incredibly gifted and dedicated people, trying to help people stay alive with HIV and AIDS and trying to help kill the epidemic itself. Thanks to the efforts of the Clinton Health Access Initiative, 80% of the people in non-wealthy countries who are living with HIV on treatment got medications that we negotiated the price for. Of all the things I've been able to do as a former president, I don't think that anything has made me more grateful than the opportunity to be part of a global network that saves lives and basically makes what we have go further. Yet for all the advances last year, there were still 1.3 million new cases of HIV. To make matters worse, the recent wave of donor withdrawal, especially with the U.S. in the forefront, could lead to more than 6 million additional cases and more than 4 million additional deaths. That's the problem. But we're here at CGI, so let's talk about the solution. Today, I'm proud to be here with all these people to announce yet another life-saving partnership between CHI, Unitaid, WITS RHI, and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. This is the next big breakthrough. Lenacapavir is a revolutionary, twice-yearly injection developed by Gilead that is exceptionally effective in preventing AIDS, HIV. One shot, 6 months of protection. The group that has negotiated a high-quality generic version of the shot has made it possible for Gilead's sharing of their formula with generic companies to make these doses available for $40 per person per year in 20 countries. And that's roughly the cost of the current PrEP pills that are taken every day for those who have found it to be quite effective in warding off becoming infected. The preliminary tests indicate that this new twice-a-year injection may be even more effective, and it certainly will be easier for people to deal with, not having to do it every day, but doing it twice a year. And it's a massive decrease from the $28,000 cost of lenacapavir in high-income countries. And I think we owe Gilead a real debt of thanks for moving so quickly on these licensing agreements. The generic versions will be available in low and middle income countries just 1 year after lenacapavir hits the market. For the first time, we have a real shot at moving from managing HIV/AIDS to actually ending it. So, for all of you who've had anything to do with this, I'm very grateful. Now, I'd be honored if Dr. Timi Tope Ilari would share the impact this agreement is going to have in Nigeria. And then we have other who will have things to say. The This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please stand.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, former President Clinton, Ministers for Health, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a rare honor for me to join you on this very historic day. Today marks a milestone in our fight against HIV globally. Through this landmark access agreement, we are unlocking affordable access to lenacapavir, a transformational new HIV prevention option that offers longer protection, greater convenience, and renewed hope to millions at risk. This agreement ensures that through this breakthrough innovation, it doesn't just stay with a privileged few, but rather it pairs innovation with equity, laying the foundation for broad, long-lasting impact for those that need it most. The government of Nigeria is determined to expand access to effective prevention and to strengthen our health systems to accelerate progress towards ending HIV as a public health threat. We are going to do this by leveraging on strong and innovative public and private sector partnership. Together with partners, many of you are in this room, we are taking this bold step towards ensuring a healthier and more resilient future, and lenacapavir surely is the key tool in that fight. Thank you.
Thank you. President Clinton, you said it, but you said something we have in common, because it has been 20 years that we are doing access to medicine together, CHAI and UNITED. So thank you for the team of CHAI, UNITED, and Dr. Reddy to have that very good outcome. It's an historic day. At UNITED, we believe that without an affordable product, then the promising innovation cannot reach their potential and impact. In this particular thing is how to prevent HIV among the women in Africa, which we know it's 100% effective. Three figures I want you to have in mind: the $40, of course, a year. The fact that we invested 50 million to shape and introduce the market together with CHAI and WITS. It's not only the price, it's also the work that we need to do with the countries, South Africa, Zambia, Uganda, and others, to make sure that we can reach the population in need. And the last thing is, 2 years, because since the approval by the FDA, I think that we will have access to generic version within 2 years, which is a record time. The counterfactual is, if we don't do that, in fact, it can take 10 or 12 years. So thank you for the work, thank you for the partnership. And now, let's do the real work with the countries. Thank you.
Well, President Clinton said it best. Today, we broke one of the biggest barriers to ending HIV as a public health threat forever. Lenacapavir is truly a revolutionary shot, nearly 100% effective at preventing HIV infections. But here's what we all know from decades in global health. Breakthrough science means nothing unless the people who actually need it can afford it. Today, this group of folks and many others changed that. In partnership with UNITAID, WITS RHI, and CHAI, we sat down with Dr. Reddy's lab and locked in this $40 per year price point, the same as daily pills, but for a far superior product. The landmark agreement really has been the result of long-standing partnership between UNITAID and CHAI, Dr. Reddy's bold commitment, and Gilead's rapid licensing. This is more than just a deal. It's a game changer in ending the HIV epidemic. It's also proof that we can move from scientific discovery to global impact at the speed that this crisis demands. And I think importantly for this moment in global health, it's a blueprint for how we can move faster and do better to make sure that no one dies from a preventable condition.
we're just incredibly proud to be a very kind of small part of this catalytic work. I do want to thank everyone who is standing kind of with and behind the people on the stage, certainly the extraordinary scientists, the phenomenal people at Unitaid who turn every no into a yes for what is possible. All of the health ministers who will tell us what we need to do to ensure that these remarkable preventative drugs are able to reach the people most in need, particularly girls and young women who represent 2/3 of the new infections in sub-Saharan Africa. None of this would have been possible without all of the people on the stage and many in the audience. We're also not going to stop here. One of the things I most admire about my parents is treating every success as just a challenge, an opportunity, an invitation, and an expectation to do even more. So we're not stopping here, but we do want to pause for a moment and feel enormous pride in what we've done to lower the costs, to begin to plan for increased access, and hopefully to invite even more partners into this work with us. Please give everyone on the stage and everyone they represent just an enormous round of applause. Thank you.
Give them a hand. This is a big deal. And for those of us who have negotiated with all these drug issues over the years, and also on other pharmaceutical areas, it's almost unheard of. I checked, I can only find one other new medicine that has ever been brought to market this quick in a generic form. And we owe a thanks to Gilead, too, for being willing to identify these partners and then to get the show on the road. So we should appreciate that. There are some cases in America where it's taken as long as 30 years to get a generic version of a new drug. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I know this is a good drug. I know it's remarkably effective. And what all the rest of you should be aware of is we have to do something because of the cutbacks in funding that we hadn't planned on for the last couple of years when we've all been sitting around waiting for this to happen, which is in order for us to get virtual herd immunity here, we not only have to get the new medicine out and get people in high-risk areas to take this twice a year. We also have to take care of the people who are still on medicine, who live in areas that will be adversely affected because of countries that cut back aid. So I've been thinking about that. Chai, we've been working on it, but this is a big deal. You should all be really happy about this. And lenacapavir is easy to remember. Sounds like you just got a compelling new aid in your office. And you did. Thank you.
Coming up next, a conversation with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton with Maria Ressa and Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
The world is too small, our wisdom too limited, our time here too short. We have to now find a way to triumph together.
Please welcome to the stage Maria Ressa, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I am so excited to be here with two women whom I admire so much, and we're going to get right into it because literally I could talk to each of them for a very long time, but that's not the way the schedule works. So I'm going to start with a question that I'm going to direct toward you, Prime Minister Mottley. You know, when I think about your leadership and the way that you highlighted the impact on your country of climate change caused by larger nations, not yourself, and then your campaign to try to get the attention, the resources, the partnerships, the investment to try to advance a plan for dealing with climate change in Barbados and the rest of the Caribbean. What's your takeaway from that? You've been at it now for a number of years. You have gone to individual countries. You've gone to the multilateral institutions. You've gone to the climate conferences. What's your takeaway? Where are we in 2025? And where is, you know, your feelings about the impact that we are seeing now and into the future?
We're still focused, Hillary, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you here yet again, and with Maria, of course. We're still focused on where we need to get because we don't have the luxury of abandoning the trajectory. Climate crisis, I don't call it climate change. The climate crisis is real for us. And when you spend the first few months of the year trying to fight drought, and then you spend almost 6 months of the year worrying about whether a hurricane or a storm is going to come or a storm surge. And then you spend the rainy season worrying about convection rain, which we never had before, which now places serious challenges on your infrastructure because it wasn't built for that intensity of weather. You understand that you don't have the luxury to turn on and turn off interests or indeed policies. We have seen some success. We're not where we need to be, but it would be disingenuous of me not to claim that we've made progress. And just merely the decisions of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and the International Court of Justice in the last few months that now allow us to have not just a moral imperative, but a legal framework within which to hold people accountable is a tremendous success. Similarly, in the Sevilla, the Compromisa de Sevilla, I think we have seen clearly the mainstreaming now of natural disaster clauses, what the World Bank calls climate disaster resilient clauses. We went to the international capital markets for the first time in 13 years, 2 months ago. We went for $500 million. There was interest for $2.7 billion. The most important thing, however, was that they took the natural disaster clauses and included it in the bonds from the international capital markets. So those people who say that it is not possible, we've shown that it is possible. And then similarly, we've now had two debt swaps, the debt for nature swap and the debt for climate swap. The difference being the first debt for nature swap sees the aggregation of interest being spent on marine sustainability and conservation over a 15-year period. But then we innovated again with the help of the Inter-American Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the Green Climate Fund to allow us to aggregate the savings and invest it in a capital project for the construction of a new sewage project, so that instead of the outfall going into the ocean, we treat the water, replenish the aquifers, and also use it for agriculture. And that, therefore, is an immediate benefit rather than waiting 10, 15 years for the benefits in the debt swaps. So you're going to continue to see the innovations. The major other thing is that domestically, we took a decision. You can't ask people to help you if you're not prepared to help yourself. And we, therefore, imposed a small levy on all employees, all self-employed people, and all employers. And at the same time, the government said if we're doing that on our citizens, then we have to lead by example so that that contribution is matched now by an annual contribution of 0.35% of GDP into the Resilience and Regeneration Fund. So this has to be mainstreamed. We know that you cannot separate people and planet. And we also know that when you run a marathon, you can't run at pace all the time. And regrettably, the global circumstances are such, the water is choppy, sometimes even perilous. You have to walk or swim or do whatever you can to keep alive and to keep the mission in focus.
Amen. Amen, Mia. That's exactly right. You know, the Bridgetown initiative, that is really her hallmark clarion call to action. You can't give in, you can't give up, you have to keep maneuvering. And here, one of the working groups on climate resilience is looking at new ways, innovative ways of financing climate resilience, adaptation, mitigation, and you're such an inspiring example. Maria, as the founder and CEO of Rappler, and as someone who has literally written a book about how to stand up to dictators, you have been on the front lines of the war against misinformation, disinformation. You have a deep understanding of what technology is doing to undermine our sense of truth and our ability to live in the reality-based world. So we know that we're at the brink of new changes because of artificial intelligence. And frankly, a lot of people are quite, not just concerned, they're scared, Maria. They're feeling, unsure about the future. How do you evaluate the fight against misinformation and disinformation? How do we keep fighting for truth and standing up for our values, often at tremendous cost, because you've paid a big cost for what you have done?
Yeah, I'll start with the bad news first, because I'm a reporter, which is that, the question I asked in How to Stand Up to a Dictator is, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? Because when the cellular level of our democracies are targeted, and you are, the response has to come up, right? And what the Prime Minister is working on, climate change is a downstream problem from information integrity. Information integrity is it. It is the mother of all battles. If we lose that, we lose everything. You cannot govern. You cannot have a shared reality. You can't have civic engagement, right? If we win that information integrity, then we have a fighting chance. You put one foot in front of the other. That's what I've learned. It's been almost a decade, and I was bombarded with 90 hate messages per hour. Any woman leader, any women, NGO, if you're a woman, LGBTQ+, if you're an ethnic minority, brown or black, you're further marginalized online, right? That's part of the design. So the first is, let's change the design. I think this is what I had asked at the opening of the 80th UN General Assembly. And there are several things that are being done there now. We're in an arms race. I hate to say that because impunity is the problem globally right now, but the arms race is in our information ecosystem. And because I'm an optimist, I struggled between two words. We're either, Hillary, you said this. You said, this time matters. And I say this all the time because this is either an information Armageddon or an information apocalypse. And because I'm an optimist, it's an Armageddon. Because, an information Armageddon means you got to jump in now. Because an apocalypse, the battle's over. The window is closing, and frankly, what happens in America will affect all of us around the world. The Philippines has an average of 20 typhoons every year.
Well, I really see a connection between what the two of you are saying, because, you know, yesterday at the UN, President Trump said, you know, climate change is a hoax.
Oh, yeah.
And that is both an example of the challenges facing the Prime Minister to continue to fight on behalf of her people, and really on behalf of so many who don't live in Barbados but are benefiting from what she's trying to do. But it's also a sign of your fight, Maria, because it's just total disinformation. It's a, you know, it's a statement that is just not true, and yet being propagated. So, Prime Minister, when you are navigating these choppy waters, as you said, how do you keep people focused on the facts of climate change? I mean, one of the things we're talking about here in the climate resilience workshop, in the misinformation working group, we're trying to figure out how do we use language to cut through the propaganda, the misinformation and everything in order to get things done. How do you feel about that, Mia?
Let us use the language of the victims, because their experiences are real, and let us use the pictures. You guys went through awful wildfires in January. It devastated families, people lost members, people lost property. Every time we think that you don't have an example to show, the climate shows us another example by hitting another country. So I'm not worried about that, because the climate and time are your greatest ally. What I'm more interested in is how do we find common purpose even when people don't necessarily agree. And I think the way to do it is, and I'm not going to tire saying it, is if we can have a global methane agreement. Methane is 80 times more destructive than carbon, but it expires from the atmosphere within 12 to 15 years. Al Gore has been telling us for the longest time that we have the technological means of monitoring. You are a lawyer. You know that when you have a treaty, the most important thing is to have transparency and measurability with respect to your targets. We have that. What is it that is the enemy? It's actually not the oil and gas companies. The oil and gas companies are not the enemy. Their emissions are. And therefore, we need to have a laser-like approach in an environment where people don't necessarily agree. Because you can show them, if you flare gas, you're burning money. And if you don't fix leaky pipes, you're letting money leak out. And if they can enhance their balance sheets while we save the planet, there's a win-win, and there's a love language commonality. Secondly, you give them the time to be able to research, to find ways of making the decarbonizing technology scalable at commercial levels. Why? Because you can't tell the developing countries of the world that they must shut down their fossil fuel industries and find no way to finance their way to net zero, because you're not changing the financial system, you're not giving them affordable longer-term capital, and at the same time expect them to accept that, when in truth and in fact, you don't have the capacity to transition everybody in the timelines that you do. So look, we are at a stage where I think we need to come in the same room. There is a common purpose between the oil and gas companies and those who want to save the planet. There is a common purpose, it's a little more complex, with respect to the changing of practices for farmers of livestock and rice paddy farming. And you may have to find ways of helping them ease, because farmers don't have the balance sheet of an oil and gas company. So I believe that actually going after legally, as we did with the Montreal Protocol, HFCs and ozone layer, that we can find a pathway to help us through this moment where we don't have the information agreement that we would like. We see the world as it is, not as we would want it, but we can make progress that benefits those who want to make money and those who want to save the planet.
You know, that's like a description of CGI. I mean, bring people into the same room, try to find that common ground, look for solutions. Honestly, I've never heard anybody say, Prime Minister, that the oil and gas companies aren't the enemy, the emissions are. I've never heard anybody say that. And you know, we are struggling to come up with new ways of talking about the dangers to the planet from climate change. And you are giving, at least to my ears, some ways of thinking about this, because when you don't have any leadership from the top of our government, we got to figure out how to be agile and quick and find people who are willing to talk to us. Maria, I want to ask you the same questions about the tech companies. Yeah. You know, you have made it abundantly clear that they are profiting off of misinformation and disinformation. We have many, many examples of that. These algorithms are driving us apart, driving us into deep, dark holes of conspiracy and hate and fear. What do we do with them to try to get the same kind of, you know, reaction to give them both the carrot and, frankly, the stick to make the changes that you know need to be made?
I mean, so first, it's the thinking fast. This is what they're exploiting, right? Our biology. And it's getting significantly worse, because with generative AI, social media was bad enough, where fear, anger, and hate spreads the fastest. That's why we're pumped full of toxic sludge. Online violence is real-world violence, and you are living through it. We are all living through it. What the Prime Minister laid out is a thinking slow process. And how do you survive in a thinking fast world? I think, well, the first step is you got to call a spade a spade. And I make that appeal to the journalist, because at a time of fear, it's hard to do that, harder to do that. There are costs to doing that. But if you don't do that, you give up ground before you can even explain what the problem is, right? So I think, do not normalize the ridiculous or the lies. The second thing is that that everything will tell you not to do it. You know, in my case, and I'll pull from what we've had, our lawyers told me I was stupid. Like, foolish, Maria, you're too naive. I'm over 60, so I'm not that naive, right? Like, but this is the time that will determine who you really are, right? You don't know who you are until you're forced to fight for it. If you believe in standards and ethics, if you believe in values, stand for it now, because that's what's important, right?
Hillary, I want to come in here because we live at a time where, yes, this has given us access to so much, but it has also removed from us the possibility of shaping and nurturing values. There was a time in this country where the main sources of media were ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS. And you knew the main print publications as well, that you could start to shape people's behavior. Other than the school system, where do you get the chance to reinforce values and shape behavior? And if that is not available to you as a sphere of influence, how do governments keep society stable other than by force? These are the real issues that we're going to continue to have to confront. The second major thing is there is too much censorship going on now on some of these AI platforms. I opened a question and asked, how and what other countries, rather, was influenced by the Barbados Slave Code of 1661? The answer came up before my very eyes, and within 4 seconds, it disintegrated and said, "I'm sorry, I cannot have that discussion with you." I then asked, what was the Slave Code of South Carolina? Give me the terms. It says, "I'm sorry, this is a topic that is off limits." So when we start to have these things happening on popular commercial AI platforms, you are trying to rewrite people's reality, and you're trying to distort what is possible for the future. And I hope that this is something that we will take up, because you cannot rewrite the history of the past, because really and truly you are going to get a violent reaction, and I don't mean violent in terms of physical violence, but I mean mentally, because people will not put up with it. After 4 or 5 centuries of slavery, why should you now be forced to go back into a box as if there is a lack of equality among human beings? Can't work.
I want to jump into this one, right? Because ultimately, in the end, this is the battle you're on, right? It's a battle for facts. a battle for agency, and a battle for rule of law, right? Because right now the enshittification of the internet is out. I didn't coin the term, but literally it's going to get significantly worse. You're talking about generative AI search. News organizations, the small and medium ones, will die, may die, if the trends continue within 6 to 8 months. Guys, you don't have that much time. So this is the time to act. This is the time to pitch in. And frankly, for the funders, this is the time to fund it. You need a tech stack that does not manipulate us. And for the tech companies, enlightened self-interest. Please do not kill us. You've already... This is a battle for humanity, right? And let me end with this. Some of the things you can do. AI.redlines, right? This is a whole group of 200 people, Nobel laureates, all the people who developed, the scientists who developed it. Sign on. We want what AI should never do, right? That's the very least. The Vatican Declaration is out. I said this at the General Assembly. Look at it. It is about restoring our humanity. The battle for our future is whether or not we retain our humanity.
Yes.
So government can govern. But also, do you really want machines to take control? Do you really want surveillance for profit to insidiously manipulate you? That's the world we're living in, so you gotta act now. Now.
Well, this brings to an end our first plenary, and now the working groups and many leaders' panels and other exciting programming will be available for all of us through the rest of the day. But these two women are really on the forefront of trying to figure out how you get things done against powerful interests. And I want to congratulate and thank them and actually beg them, never stop, because we need you now more than ever. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Working groups and leaders' stage programming will begin promptly. Please exit to the back of the room.